south side is within. The mind regulates the hand that masters the pen. The pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier still. The stargate to the mind's revealed, the vortex. So yeah, peace peeps. Your host Cyclonious. Do you mind giving your name to the people watching?
Apex Zero, man, good to be here.
And it's a pleasure to have you on the platform, brother. Again, for those that don't know, me and Apex have collaborated on songs like Together, and how can I forget the other tune?
It happens, fam.
That's with Me, You, Black Stacks, and that was on my album. I forgot what the song.
I forgot the name as well, brother.
Yeah, I forgot the name of the song, but it will come back to me. Yeah? It don't matter anyway. Just once you Google or you look around, you'll find a tune. But yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the platform and to be talking to you about what you've got going on right now.
I appreciate being here, bro. Definitely.
Oh yeah, definitely, brothers. You know, can you please tell me the inspiration behind your new project, Drummer Warrior Storyteller, and how it embodies the perception of storytelling?
It's quite a long story, bro. It's one of them things where I've been working on this for a long time now. I think it's come up to 7 years, and it started off as just 2 EPs. It was going to be right. So I, in my head, it was like I'm coming back from Beijing. I was living in Beijing for a few years. Come back over here, and just really needed to get back into things over here. You know what I mean? It's like a reset. And so I was like, right, let me get back in the studio, start creating all this inspiration I'd soaked up from being out there and being, other parts of the world. And then it was one of them things where the work started building and started growing. Got a lot of dope collaborators on there, just even on the music. Like the beats, a lot of them are made by Parky. Big up Michael Parkinson all day. People like Watusi on there, Magical from RU1, Logic's on there. Asata Sheriff is on there, so it's like great people just working with. And as this thing started building, got close to getting them finished, and then went and sat down with a couple of people who I wanted to dance in the video. And one of them was producer Steph B, and she was like, "Yo, this sounds like this needs to be bigger than that." Do you know what I mean? So what are you interested in? What are you reading at the moment? Like where's all these ideas coming from? And yeah, it hit me that she's right. Do you know what I mean? And it was this thing of wanting to take my artistry to another level. Do you know what I mean? Because there's lots of things that I do. Music and rapping are one factor of that. I worked with Global Faction for years, making music videos. I co-founded I Am Hip Hop magazine, so I write, you know what I mean, and there's all these other things, and so wanting to sort of challenge myself to do something that allowed me to grow was one of the sort of first inspirations behind it. Bigger than that, it was wanting to create platforms and create something that would allow the African Caribbean storytelling dynamic that I'm really dealing with to be able to, well, I guess more than anything to learn about it. Do you know what I mean? To see what it is, because I think having reflected on what it is to be an MC, I think a lot of us, I know you do, a lot of us talk about this idea of it being connected to the griots, right, and the gelés and the storytelling traditions that are African, that were brought with us to the Caribbean and to the Americas, right? Yeah. And we know that those of us who know that there is this long history that traces back with the rhythm. But I feel like I came to realize a lot more stronger that the word is my skill. Do you know them ones? And so as much as I make beats and I'm into the music, you get them top tier musicians. Do you know them ones who can touch any instrument and turn it into fire? I know I'm not one of them. You know them ones but what I can do that with, what I can make fire with, is the word, right? The power, the word sound power that I have. I know over years of crafting that's what I can do. And so then really digging into what that means and what that is, led me to the drums. Do you know what I mean? And led me to this, those griots, they didn't just run on their own with the word sound power. The rhythm come first. The same way that the DJ comes first in hip hop culture, the drum comes first.
That's right.
There's the dance. All of this is a way for us to connect with the spirit and to be able to tell the history of our people onto the next generation. You know what I mean? And so one of the people who helped me see this was Chinua Achebe's writing. You know, his Things Fall Apart and the African trilogy in particular. But I really got into his writing, and I was looking up. I was trying to find a skit for the album to get him talking and saying some of the things that he said. And he says that the drummer, in the history of storytelling from an African perspective, the drummer calls forth the people, gathers the people. The warrior goes forward and fights the war, but it's the storyteller that outlives the rest of them.
Right.
And passes on the history, creates history, and gives it to the next generation, because that is what the survivors need in order for their survival to have meaning. Right? And I remember when I heard him say those words, and bear in mind this part of his transition, you know, this is him talking in like the 80s in the interview. When I heard him say those words, it resonated with me almost instantly that what I've been trying to do most of my adult life is to be all three of those characters.
Yes.
You know, play all three of those roles, right? Because the type of music we do, the type of lyrics we spit, it's not about being famous. It's not about charting. You know, them ones. It's not about entertaining, really. You know what I mean? I know we have a certain caliber and quality of the artistry that we want to do to make sure what we do is captivating, right? But the goal, the end goal of what I do, and I feel like it's the same for you and a lot of people I see on your podcast, your channel. The goal is to improve the world and the situation that our people is facing.
Yeah.
You know, them ones. If we can allow people to have a good time in doing that, to have something that helps them resonate, to get through their day, to get through their life, do you know, them ones.
Yeah.
To impart wisdom. That's the storytelling. But then at the same time, using the music and using hip hop as a culture and a platform to bring people in is the drum. And then I can't be one of them people who just talks the talk without walking the walk. Do you know what I mean? So I've been out on the roads doing what I do, what I have been doing. I'm in certain places, I'm in certain spheres, always constantly fighting the fight. And you know, this project has allowed me to be able to, in many ways, come to terms with those three roles are what make me who I am. Do you know what I mean?
Would you say that this project so far is your magnum opus?
It definitely feels that way, bro. It feels like this is the reason why I'm here. You know what I mean? And for a long time when I was younger, I struggled to really understand, you know, I feel like those three roles were at conflict within me. Right. You know, where, for better or worse, rapping is talking. You know what I mean? It is using your voice, even creating artwork, right? If we consider, you know, making records, making albums as a form of making artwork, you can admire the artist. You know, but I remember I interviewed Dead Prez for the magazine years ago, and I said to them, you know, they're one of the reasons why I know about Malcolm and Martin. You know what I mean? And know about Marcus Garvey, and you know, they really put me onto that. You know, and I wanted to do that for other people. You know, when I put that to them, Stickman goes to me, yeah, but you know what, Malcolm. You know what I mean? Like, I might have put you onto Malcolm, but Malcolm, you know what I mean? Garvey, like, they are who they are. They did what they did. You know what I mean? Like, and what that resonated with me was like, yeah. And what I felt I've been struggling with was there's the talking and there's the doing. You know what I mean? And that kind of conflict. I think a lot of us have that, right? I'm thinking, if I spend all my life making art about what we're going through, how am I contributing? You know what I mean? Could I be spending that same energy organizing, being, you know, getting organizations ready, you know? And yeah, it's like there's a finite amount of time and energy that any one human being has, right? And so those things were kind of like in conflict in me. And I think as I got older, as I traveled, as I saw the world, it became clearer to me that it's all the same thing. It can all be the same thing if that's how you move. You know what I mean? And it's like they're not. So in doing this project, you know, I'm not just talking. And talking is, I've also come to terms with how powerful talking is. You know what I mean? Whether that's through rap, whether that's just me and you in conversation, whether that's, you know, you see a couple of youths fighting on the road and being that one who's gonna be in there and be like, yo, we can't be doing this. You know, you know, we've all done that at some point, right? And so talking is a really powerful thing, but at the same time, what you build with your words and what you build with your actions, this project has allowed me to put money into people's pockets. It's allowed me to create platforms for people to be able to express themselves. I've become so much more. People like Demba and Musa, who are like the main musicians and drummers in this project, what they've taught me about the drum and about the griot history. They are from griot families. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just something abstract to them. They've grown up living that in West Africa, right?
Yeah.
And we've all learned from each other. The dancers we have, what I've learned about movement, they've put me in positions. My brother Corey, John Z D, who's been really key to helping us get platforms and get into spaces. They had me dancing at Sadler's Wells in a way that, you know, I've never done that before on stage. And my debut of actual movement was on stage at Sadler's Wells. Do you know what I mean? And so that the way we're moving and operating as a family, do you know what I mean? Everyone connected to this is a family. We're creating something, this paradigm, this world that is like, if we're gonna be stuck in Babylon, and Babylon isn't always a physical place, right? Do you know what I mean? Like it's the fuckery that is done to us, which is this all over the world. We need to have different ways of moving and operating. And what we're building with this project is a space where we can move in a way that benefits us, that allows us to express ourselves in certain ways, to tell our stories without someone telling us to be quiet or to not do this or leave this bit out, and to just be completely and unapologetically ourselves. And all of that started from me talking, from me, you know what I mean, from me rapping, you know what I mean? And then from that, we've now created a production platform, spaces, a family that is an example of how we could live. You know what I mean? And to me, yes, so like, and if that's what I'm here to do, if this is the biggest thing, the last thing that I ever do with my time on this plane, I'll be very satisfied with that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Dopeness. What made you decide to create a living album rather than a traditional studio album? And how does the live performance aspect enhance the storytelling experience?
That's a great question. I think the first thing was it. I think what I've learned about creativity with this is that it's not necessarily me making the decisions. Do you know what I mean? Like it didn't start off as a living album. It started off as I said, 2 EPs. so Then I had too many tunes, and I was like, no, it's this needs to deep, be an right? album. It's one of them things where, as the project's gone on, I've really come to understand that it's not necessarily me making all the decisions. Yeah, and there's moments, especially, and I think on stage especially, when you have these moments where you're starting to feel like you're just facilitating this thing. You know what I mean? And it wasn't a conscious decision to make this a living album. You know what I mean? It started off as 2 EPs. I had enough tunes for it to be an album. I was like, right, it's going to be an album. It wasn't even called Drummer Warrior Storyteller at that point. It was only when I heard that Chinua Achebe interview, that's when it got its name. And I realized these things are just kind of being sent to me. And it's my role to facilitate and put them together in a way that, and I guess that's where my creativity comes into it, because there are decisions that I'm making, right? But it's about what's best for the project, about giving it what it needs to be able to be what it's going to be. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm finding the way to make that happen, as opposed to I want to do this a lot of the time, you know? But that power, it really does feel, like, it's what I'm here to do. It's what I'm meant to be doing. It's not always easy, because you have to try, you know, if you know, like even the show we're doing on October 6th at Earth, that's a 700 capacity theatre. We have to sell them tickets independently. Do you know what I mean? We've got to move. So how can I go about doing that? Do you know what I mean? Making sure my people are getting paid properly, making sure
These guys are just following us wherever we go. Sorry, carry on, brother.
Just making sure things get done the way they need to get done. And so the live performance is a part of that. Like the first live installation we did was the Hackney Social. Big up my brother Jules for putting us on there. And we'd made the music was already there, the whole album was there. Made the first film, got this incredible set of people involved, dancers from, you know, some of the best dancers in the world, I would say, and movement directors. They came in, brilliant videographers. We made this thing, and then as we were doing it, one of the inspirations for one of the scenes is a woman called Dr. Akua McMorris, who's a great friend of mine now. And the cinematography was inspired by her photography. And so where she was coming in and helping us with the cinematography. We were like, well, if you're going to be here with a camera, you should be taking pictures. Do you know what I mean? Because she's a photographer, she did it, works are amazing. And I start realizing this is growing, right? We've gone from having music to now having a film. Out of the film has now come these photographs. So I also invited Dora Lamb, who's a brilliant painter, to come in. And she live painted one of the scenes, created this. So now we're looking at, you know, we've got photographs, we've got paintings, we've got film. We can't just screen the film. We have to. This now becomes an art installation. Do you know what I mean? So we put this installation in at the Hackney Social, performing live. And as I said, like I named it Drummer before we even had like live drumming on the thing. Do you know what I mean? So now I'm thinking I can't be saying that without digging into that, right?
Right.
Aligned with Ukombozi, Ancestral Drums, and I was heading down to Ackland Village a lot them times. I mean, they do the drum calls on the Sunday, and that's where I met Demba. And this brother is a master drummer, Senegalese traditions, plays a dundun as his main drum, and he's just incredible. So when I heard this brother, I was like, I keep being sent people, do you know what I mean, to get involved in this project, to just align with it, you know what I mean? And it's like they seem to come just when I need them, you know what I mean? And so through that, it got put together. We did the Big Show at Rich Mix in 2022, which was the first time we turned it into an immersive theatre show. And again, that's something I haven't done before. There were people involved who had done things similar to it, but we worked really well together to make this thing become what it's going to be. But we had a very little amount of time to do it, right? We got the venue, we got the funding, and I think we only had 4 weeks to pull the whole thing off, from creating it to displaying it. Do you know what I mean? And when that happens, there's these moments where things are gonna, I don't even want to say they go wrong, because they happen how they're meant to happen. Do you know what I mean? But it didn't go to the plan we had necessarily, right? And we had an hour to set up the exhibition. We had an hour to turn the exhibition space into a performance space. And it was the first time we performed on that stage. Couldn't rehearse in that stage, right? And so what was going to happen was going to happen. And there was these moments where I could tell, whilst I'm in this zone, that whoever's supposed to be on stage next ain't coming. Do you know what I mean? And so what do you do in that situation? You don't go, oh, sorry guys, the thing's flopped. You know, them ones, Now you move, innit? So there were certain speeches on that day that just came through me that were not rehearsed. And I know the dancers as well, you know, Corey, Andre, Grace, incredible movers. And I know there was moments where they just did their thing. You know, them ones embodied the spirit of the project and just put it on display. And in some way, you know, you can look at that and say, okay, we were stalling for time, or we were improvising or freestyling. But it's more than that. The project was taking life through us, and that needed to be said at that moment. And some people have come to us and said, like, yo, that bit there was my favourite bit of the whole event. And we're like, that's the bit we didn't rehearse. You know what I mean? So there's something about, you know, the freestyle. I know a lot of jazz musicians talk about it in the improvisation, like when you're just in that moment where you ain't even consciously necessarily doing something, and the spirit is just talking through you, it's unbelievable, man. And so like to try to grow that live element, again, the word live, you say you perform this thing live, you can make an album and then perform it live. We're taking it further and saying every time we install the album, it's growing and it's changing and it's becoming what it is. You know what I mean? And like I said, the actual music has changed. I had 12 tracks at first with an intro, and that intro now no longer exists. It's in one of the films, but it's not going to be, when we put out the whole album, it won't be that intro, because now I've learned I have to do something different. You know what I mean? Like there's certain skits that are now in different places because things have happened live that now I've recorded that and say that needs to go into the record that we do. You know what I mean? Like the vision I want to have for it, what I want to do for it, is re-record the whole album with the band that plays live. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it feels like, again, the drums aren't present enough to be in a thing that's called Drummer Warrior Storyteller. Yes. You know? So there's all these different ways and visions for it. And like I said, if I'm working on this for the next 20 years, I'll be very, very happy. Do you know what I mean? It really does feel like this is what I'm here to be doing.
And I think you will be doing that for the next 10, 20 years, because I think it's going to go from strength to strength. I think more people are going to hear about it, more people's going to want to see it, more people's going to want to experience it. What I wanted to say to you while you're saying that, because when I'm hearing you, I'm saying to myself, I know you're a humble man, yeah? But you have to give, like for me, I'm going to give you have to have the kudos, brother, because no matter what, it's coming from you. It's like, no matter what. And I believe everybody deserves flowers while they're alive. It shouldn't be a thing, oh, where you gone? Oh, he was a great guy. No, we're telling you now that what you're doing is dope, yeah? And it's testament of your character, while all of these people are being part of what you're creating. Because the next Joe could try and do the same thing, and people might be like, "Nah, that guy's a waste man," or "Nah, I don't believe him," or "Nah, you know, it's not really for me." But it's testament to who you are and what you're doing. While people are like, you know what, I'm going to be a part of that, and also it's magnetism. I've always believed real recognize real. I reckon you've done so much out there that now that you're on a chance to turn around and say, "Guys, look, here's the ship. Yeah, are you jumping on?" Everybody's like, "Yo, we're on board." So again, I just wanted to just sprinkle that on top of that.
I appreciate you, bro. Definitely.
All right, so how do you see the roles of the drummer, the warrior, and the storyteller intertwining with the narrative of your project? How do they contribute to the creating history and forming memory?
It's a great question, bro. I think, yeah, for me, it's those roles are ancient roles, you know. Like for when Chinua Achebe was saying that, maybe like the 80s, but I don't know if you've ever read any of his stuff. But his first novel was based in Igbo land in what's now Nigeria, and he kind of gives this history of where his people have come from, right? And he does it at a time of invasion. So they got this crossover of the missionaries and these kind of things. But what I love about his work is that he doesn't sugarcoat things. Do you know what I mean? And he doesn't try to go on like what happened before was like a perfect society. You know, he talks as much to the beauty and so much of the things that were lost in Igbo society specifically, but also the things that he would criticize as someone looking back now, right? Or maybe things that still exist today, right? In that society. And so he's talking about a time that even if you're Igbo now and you're living in Igbo land now, that world doesn't exist anymore because of colonialism and what happened, right?
Yes.
And so he's passing us on these jewels that have come from research and come from family ties and knowing what happens in his life, but that ability to be critical of self and of your own people whilst still paying reverence to your ancestors, knowing where they come from and knowing what we've been through, to like pretend that everything was bliss does a disservice, you know them ones. So that kind of clear, as clear as you can and as strongly as you can, telling the truth that needs to be told is something that I feel really comes through. Do you know what I mean, right? In what I'm trying to do, it's just like undiluted. And it's not even about, to me, it's not even about positive or negative. It's not, you know, because to me, our ancestors and what they did, not even just what we've been through, right? But what they did before is spectacular. Do you know what I mean? Like the African cultures, for it to, you know, they tried to destroy us so many times. They've come for us and tried to, you know, take what we have. And then when you know, my people from Grenada, you know, they still have the Shango out in Grenada. They still have, you know, the ancient ways, right, are still out there. It's all over the Americas. Do you know what I mean? And then people are now moving back and forth. So there's all these things that we do and have done that our ancestors have created. They're not without fault, but there's bigger things here. There's much bigger things at work here. You know what I mean? And so for me, that idea of using music and performance to bring people to this, I'm sure I know a lot of people who are brilliant in their thoughts, but maybe not that great in their execution. Do you know what I mean, right? And so they'll make music or they'll make art that will have such an important message, but don't nobody really care. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's not because, you know, we know how the music industry works. You know, there's so much money that gets pumped into making something that's successful. And I'm not talking about the people who are spectacular at what they do but don't have the money to get it out there. I mean, there's some people, and it's, you know, it's a learning curve. When I was younger, I was one of them people. Do you know them ones? I knew what I wanted to say, but I didn't have the means to say it in the way that I could. Do you know what I mean? And it takes time to build your craft and build these things. I want to make this thing captivating so that people want to come and see this regardless. Do you know them ones? And to me, that's what the drummer does. The drummer brings the people, right? I don't know if you've ever been, there's certain times you'll be in Africa or you'll be in the Caribbean, and you get it in London, fam, because like I say, man like Denver will go to parks and just drum. Do you know them ones? Man like Musa will be out on the road just drumming. You know them ones, yeah, 'cause that's what they do. And you'll hear the drum, and that drum brings you forth, bro. It's not a joke. Like it's an ancient technology of communication. You know what I mean? Where messages can be spread across miles and miles and miles of land. You know them ones. As long as you know the language. Do you know what I mean? And it's like there's bare documentation. I had a great conversation with a brother called Yolo Koba, South African academic, who was talking about how the technology of the drums, there's a reason why they banned it. You know them ones.
I was just about to say to you, I remember reading somewhere where on plantations they used to ban African drumming because it used to what was it? The slave masters will turn sick, or you know, they'll lose all their hair and teeth, all sorts of madness. And they said, "Yo, we got to stop them from whatever they're doing. Cut that out." And drumming was one of them.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
My sis Roxanne Simone, who made a beautiful metalwork piece for this project. She's doing more work on it as well. She's researching this at the moment about how there's a particular moment in time where they banned these drums in the plantations in the Caribbean, but they kept them. Do you know them ones? Because they overstood the power.
The power.
Do you know what I mean, right? And so they kept them and they would sell them off to certain collectors, and they're in museums and But yeah, this idea of it being before the internet, before phone lines, the drum could carry a message thousands and thousands and thousands of miles. Do you know what I mean? So the louder, the more clear your drum is, the more you can bring people to your thing. Do you know them ones, right? Into what you're trying to achieve. So that role there is central to it, kind of metaphorically and abstractly, but then because of what we're doing, physically, Denver is one of the central points of this. Musa is one of the central points of this because their drumming is from the source, is of the source, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the warrior, for me, gets like, you know, in what we're trying to achieve and what we're trying to do, everything we're doing is fighting the fight. Whether we wanted to or not, from the moment that the colonizer turned up at our door, whether it was with the gun or with the missionaries or with some kind of thing to bribe, you know, them ones, a lot of the time they came dying and struggling because they're in parts of the world that they're not meant to be in, and they couldn't deal with the heat or whatever else and the parasites or whatever, you know what I mean? You know the word Mzungu, East African word for white people, right? So when I spent some time in Uganda, and the brothers out there, this word Mzungu, a lot of East Africans, they'll say this word for white people, and the actual meaning, one of the brothers told me, is it's a traveller who's lost their way. Right. So they'll come into their community as a traveller who lost their way. They help them, feed them, clothe them, bring them back to health, and then man will be like, "Yo, bring in the troops." You know what I'm saying? So it's like
that's what they do.
Right, it's what they do. Right, it's literally what they do. Right, and so from them times there, we've been at war, whether we want to acknowledge that or not. Right, whether we want to sit in London, you know what I mean, knowing what happens to us here, not knowing what happens to us here. Do you know what I mean? And we're behind enemy lines. We're in a state of war. Right, so we're constantly fighting this battle, and that battle isn't necessarily fought with guns or knives or spears or whatever, right? It's a spiritual war. It's a metaphysical war that we're in. It's a political war. Do you know what I mean, right? And I've had to learn as well that badding up the enemy ain't the only way to deal with a war. Do you know? And them ones like bringing your people together, knowing who your enemy even is. Do you know? And them ones, because I feel like it goes without saying nowadays, but it's not all white people we're at war with. It's not all anyone, right? There is a specific class of people who are running everything, and they're never on the front line of any war.
That's right.
They're sat in a boardroom or in their yard.
That's right.
Their mansion somewhere else, pressing buttons and making decisions. Do you know them ones?
Right.
And that's the enemy. Right? They're the ones who sent them Mzungus. Do you know them ones, right?
That's right. I ain't gonna forget the Mzungu.
No, it's fire, bruv. It's fire, bruv. So it's like we're fighting this war, and to me, the embodiment in the project is the dancers, right? The way that they are these physically incredible human beings, bruv.
They're bringing through the spirit visually,
exactly.
innit?
But in the live performance, we have three, Corey, Andre and Maya are going to be the three dancers in this performance at Earth. And like I said, that what they can do physically, what they can do emotionally and spiritually with their bodies, in the same way that we can with lyrics. In a way that we can sort of, I said, you'll be in that moment sometimes and your pen is just on fire and you don't know where this is coming from. Do you know them ones? The same way I've watched these people bend their bodies in ways that I can't even comprehend because they spent their whole life, in the same way that a soldier does. Do you know them ones? Like you see that man who can run for days. Do you know them ones like with very little food and water. You know them ones like they're the warriors in this thing. And then the storyteller, we all come together to be that storyteller. We have some incredible spoken word artists as well. Guy, Kelton Jones and Poetica are like the forefront of that. And the way that they again, like the artistry is just, it's unbelievable, fam. Like, we sat together to come up with some of the pieces, and I spoke through the inspiration, had a day of just writing together on what they just came with, like that. And, you know, the way that their voice can just pierce through, absolute silence in the space, and their voice will just pierce through and just hit you in the heart, bro. Do you know, them ones, like, this skill. But then again, like, even the other, you know, the other drummers involved, they're storytellers, all the artists, the photographers, the metal workers, every single person involved, they're using the crafts that they've built through their whole life to be able to tell their story. And, you know, and not all of them are even African, right, or Caribbean. Do you know what I mean? We have, you know, so we have some Chinese people in there. The curator, Kongwa, is Korean. But what we have in common is what we've been through as people who've experienced colonization.
The magnetism, bro.
Yeah, it's huge.
That's
Do you know what I
right.
mean? And so that coming together in unity. Yeah, the focus of this is African Caribbean experiences, but that's because I'm the starting point of this. Do you know what I mean? So I'm building outwards from there. But anyone who's involved, Irish people involved in this, Cypriot people involved in this, you know, them ones, and what we all have in common is we want to see a positive change in the world, but also that we know what it's like to have been through these things, just in different flavors.
That's right.
You know?
And I guess it's, you know, they all believe that story that is there at the heart of it needs to be told.
For sure.
Because it will transcend.
Yeah.
Could you share with us some of the key themes and messages that you aim to convey through Drummer Warrior Storyteller?
The main one, and again, I don't want this to sound like cliched, because I know when I was younger, I would hear people say this and think, oh, they're just saying that kind of vibes. But it really is love, bro. Like, the main theme of this thing is love. And it took me a long time and a long, twisted journey to understand what people meant when they said that. You know, them ones. Yeah. And, like, for me, when I was younger, I was very big into reading Frantz Fanon and, you know, Heads Like Dead Prez and Immortal Technique, and, you know, this kind of militant way of seeing the situation that we're in, you know what I mean? And being like, we have to fight back, and we, you know, and I still stand by that. You know, them ones, there's no question, and that's what we have to do. How you fight is very, very important. Do you know what I mean? And why you're fighting and what you're fighting for. Like, when I was a teenager, I've been on this thing quite a long time, and when I was a teenager, it's really hard to articulate that. So I'd be going out and doing things and being in certain situations where it was almost just me training to be this warrior regardless of who the enemy was. Do you know them ones? Like, and doing certain things that I shouldn't be doing. A lot of things I regret, bruv. Do you know them ones? Because you're out here kind of learning on the go, learning on the job. Do you know them ones? Like, and that's a dangerous job to learn on. Do you know them ones? And yeah, I've been really lucky again to work with some spiritual guiders, Mama Amma and Priestess Ashenyemi in particular, so in the Akan and the Yoruba tradition. And in the Yoruba tradition, they talk about that your head, your ori. And I feel like for a long time I departed from the way of my ori, right? And had to go through that training to come back to be the person that can now do something like this.
Okay.
Right? And when I made it back to that point, something that I really had to learn that was, physically fighting, you know, warring is only one way we're gonna be able to make a change. Right, and for a long time I was very much, you know, if you had to pick, it would be Malcolm over Martin for me. Do you know them ones? But then I've started to really understand every single way of fighting back, celebrating our people, you know, living for our people, living for, you know, to make a positive change, a productive change for our people. However you're able to do that is a way that's going to make a difference. You know, them ones, like, there's no single way that's been like, we have to just do this and do this perfectly and we will win, because the thing is so much more complex than that. You know what I mean? It's so intricately woven into our lives and into our societies and the way that we even exist. Do you know what I mean? It's also 500, 600, 700 years in the making. You know what I mean? You ain't gonna make it just disappear overnight.
This is it.
By finding the way. You know what I mean? And so, one of the other people who've been important to this project, Brother Omawale, in one of his books, he talks about how, as African people, we are thousands, if not millions, of years old, right? When other races came out of us and moved to different places and whatever else, they're still very, very ancient, right? And so enslavement and colonization period of African Caribbean people is tiny in comparison to the huge amounts of life that's existed before that, right? And so to dedicate your entire existence to just fighting in this way that is completely altered by this tiny little moment in our immense history doesn't make sense. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. To try to align with all of that life that existed beforehand, to try to get back to that in order or get forward in a way that preserves that essence, to me makes much more sense. Right. And it's took me a long time to get to that. And that's why the album so far has come out in these two parts. The first part is very much about the fight and the battle and the training you had to go through to be able to even understand these things and think in these ways. But that led me to a place where I couldn't see beyond that. You know what I mean? And I had to leave this country. I had to go and live abroad. I had to travel the world, get to Africa, get to other parts of the Caribbean. I spent a lot of time in Asia, just being with other cultures and seeing that, you know what, bro, what's happening on the roads in London or in Birmingham or Bristol is one tiny thing of this much bigger thing that's going on. And the love that I have and found for people all over the world was immense, you know what I mean? And then one thing that was very, very huge for me was my brother Natty took a bunch of us out to Venezuela to do this Yopo ceremony, and we might not have enough time to really talk about it in a lot of detail, but I made a documentary about it, released The Fear, The Sacred Journey, based on his album.
Right.
His album like is the soundtrack for this whole journey. But it really, that ceremony really made me understand the oneness of not just humans, but of the world, of all of the universe and all the existence, the connectedness I had with everything. It really changed me, as like fundamentally changed me. Do you know what I mean? And what I really understood is that love is at the core of everything. It made me come back and just be like, right, that's one of the things that helped me get to a place where I could do work like this. Because it was like, you know what, if what the colonizer and the enslaver tried to take from us was the ability to live how we choose, was the ability to have family and to travel the world and to be out of chains and to live the life that you want to the maximum you can, they tried to take that from us. So to do that is a victory in itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To live however you choose, caring for people, you know, being about help, again, all the way, but there was love and care and intimacy in the hull of a slave ship. Even if it was just holding someone's hand and being like, it's gonna be okay. You know what I mean? Like seeing someone being the worst of the worst and being like, you're good, like you're gonna get through this. You know, like was it the Igbo? You know, like a whole bunch of our ancestors jumped into the ocean. Yeah. To be they were like, you know what, we're gonna come back. If I, you know, why am I gonna be in this? Do you know what I mean? And the bravery and the love you have to have for your people to know it's like, I don't want to be here. I'm just gonna, we'll come back. You know, them ones, and we'll come back and do a thing. Your foresight and your insight needs to be so far beyond just the physical.
You have to be
political
tapped
plane.
in.
Yeah, you do, bro. And it took me a long time to come back to a place where I was tapped in. Because when I was younger, I was quite a spiritual person, and it took me on that. I had to go on that route of being like, nah, it's about the politics and it's about the physical, to get back to a place where you know what, fam, our lives are infinite, even if this particular vessel that you're in is finite. You know what I mean? Yeah. And being really part of this whole fabric of the oneness, I really understood what that means. You know what I mean? And so if I can be a conduit of love whilst I'm in this form, I'll be very happy with that, and I know I'm gonna go on to whatever the next stage is. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Rather than spending my life banging my head against Babylon and not having any enjoyment. What do I gain? What does anyone gain from me being angry and enraged all day, every day?
Yeah, that's all it will be.
Yeah.
There's no movement, and it taps back into what you said with M1 saying to you, Malcolm. Because, you know, rather than just saying, do. And that's what you're doing. That's what I'm saying. Right now, you're doing God's work. You know what I'm saying? And it's a beautiful thing.
I appreciate that, brother. Definitely.
In what ways do you incorporate elements from the Igbo culture, history, into your performance? And how do these influence shape the overall storytelling experience?
It's interesting because it's I wouldn't say it is only Igbo. and it's been really interesting because, again, this idea of African Caribbean has been really central to this. I still use the word black if I feel like, again, it's how you communicate these things, and I think black is also an important factor. I know a lot of people who are sort of like, they want to be known as African and not black. Do you know them ones? Or they want to be known as Caribbean or not Caribbean even. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And for me, again, the kind of complexity of this, I don't necessarily mean black people. I think that's something I've also learned through like people like Fred Moten. They talk about blackness as opposed to whiteness. You know what I mean? And whiteness doesn't necessarily mean white people. It means the power of oppression that has come from differentiating all life into these categories, right? But then as black being the all, right? You know what I mean? Everything comes out of blackness and the oneness, right? Before there is light, there is black. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so learning all of these things has been really important to me. And Igbo culture, like Chinua Achebe in particular, has been one aspect that taught me about that Igbo culture and that need for the drum and the warrior and the storyteller. We have a section when we have enough space. We have a section of the space that is named after the playground or the outside space in Igbo communities. That's a place where people can come. We have books there and people can paint and learn about that. And my brother Victor, big up Victor from EOW Nigeria, he was a great help in sort of giving me extra information about what these things mean to make sure I'm not making mistakes. Do you know what I mean? Make sure I'm not interpreting things wrong. But then it's like Yoruba culture has been really big for me. You know what I mean? The spirituality has become really important for me. The Akan tradition has become really important. A lot of us are coming from different, like brother Andres from Sierra Leone, for example, and getting to know about the Sierra Leone culture, that they were people who were taken and then were brought back. Do you know what I mean? And then there was still indigenous people in Sierra Leone, what got called Sierra Leone, who hadn't been taken. Do you know what I mean? And then they were kind of clashing in certain places. And it's a very similar story in Liberia. Do you know what I mean? And so there's this idea for me that I for a long time I've identified and seen myself as African, right? Even if I've never been to Africa, even if I'm, my mother is English and Irish. Do you know them ones? Like my father is Grenadian. I got tapped in to understand that I'm African. But one thing I struggled with again was that like when I met people who were Nigerian or Ghanaian, for example, Senegalese, like Demba, Mali, and like, it made me sad to think that but that I didn't have the knowledge of the history of the culture in the way that they do. Like someone like Demba from Senegal, him and Senegal are like inseparable. Do you know what I mean? Even if he lives over here, do you know them ones? But the way that he lives his culture, like Musa, this brother's life story is just phenomenal. And the way that his knowledge of that culture is so huge. One thing that saddened me for a long time is that that's really what I feel was stripped from us as Caribbean people. Do you know what I mean? Right? We know that the name, the gods, the language, these things were taken from us. And as difficult as that is to deal with, going, connecting with people, with these cultures didn't die. Do you know what I mean? Some did, but a lot of cultures are still vibrantly living. You know what I mean, right? And at any moment you can go and get tapped into it and align with it and learn about it. Yeah. But what I've really, the way I've changed my perception on this thing is that it's not that I don't know which ethnic group I belong to. It's that because of 700 years of violation, one thing that I've gained in this individual is I might have 15, 20, 40, 50 different ethnic groups in me through my ancestors. Them ones. So for me to be like, which one is the one that I need to align with, don't make sense. Them ones. One thing that we've gained, we've lost a lot in diaspora, but we've gained in diaspora is the ability to be connected with many different African ethnicities, right? Right. And when I go back to Africa, I had a big fear when I was younger, because again, one thing we do as a community, if I'm going to be critical of our community in London, kind of Pan-African community, is we fetishize Africa sometimes, right? We treat it like it's this mythical place. Do you know what I mean? Where, bro, there's all these millions of people living their lives that if we reduce it to an imagined fetishized way, we're not doing justice to the people who were living, you know, them ones, yeah. And when I went, I was scared that, you know, are they going to reject me? Are they going to, you know, certain times I'll go back to the Caribbean when I was younger, especially, be like, oh, white boy, you know, them ones. And that's painful when you're growing up in a certain way. Do you know them ones? I've had to come to terms with that. And I grew my locks up and now I don't really get that no more. Do you know them ones? Yeah, I'm moving a certain way where it's like, yes, Rasta man, you know them ones, not white boy no more. And then I was thinking it was going to be stuff like that. And when I went to Uganda, in particular Uganda, the way that they welcomed us back was like, yo, come through. You know, them ones that, and you know, Nilotika collective out there, the ensemble out there, they were the first people I drummed with again. I played the pans when I was younger. I hadn't really touched a drum or a pan for a long time. And then when I was out there, we just drummed bare, you know, them ones. And the way that they were like happy to see us and you know, this hip hop culture brought us together. We were there to perform. Big up Amy True and Snuff and Logic, who I was out there with. And we were going from place to place, doing these shows, connecting with the culture. And again, we don't talk about East Africa in the same way we talk about West Africa and we talk about Caribbean people. But the way that we had this connection, the way when I very first went to Ghana and I touched the land, you just feel it, fam. You know, them ones. Like, and this is a point when I was really not on this spiritual road. I didn't think I was.
But what's outside is within. The mind regulates the hand that masters the pen. The pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier still. The stargate to the mind's revealed. The vortex.